Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking about the Eddie Van Halen scale, what it is, and how to use it. Now I did a lesson about this before. This is the part 2 of that lesson, so I'm just taking some of the concepts from that lesson and using a different version of that scale. So first off, if you don't know what the Eddie Van Halen scale is, definitely check out the previous video I did if you have not seen it. But the quick explanation of what people mean when they say the Eddie Van Halen scale, what that is really what you would call a pattern scale. Either a pattern scale or a scale with symmetrical fingering. So what exactly does that mean? It's a really, really simple concept. All that means is that if you play the same fingering on each string, so for example, if I were to play 12-15 on the 6th string, 12-15 on the 5th string, 12-15 on the 4th string, on the 3rd string, and then on the 2nd and 1st, that's a pattern scale. A pattern scale or a scale with symmetrical fingering. And what you'll notice about these scales is they don't really make sense. They're not a traditional major, minor, Dorian scale. The notes don't really make sense together. All it is it's an easy way to remember a set of notes on the fretboard. You don't have to remember crazy fingerings that you have in a 3-note per string scale or something like that. It's really simple. So that's the advantage of this scale. It's really easy to remember. The other advantage here, as you heard in the little intro that I was playing there, is that these scales sound really unique. They give that really outside sound. So not a traditional, minor pentatonic type sound. It's very much an outside style lick. So easy to remember. They sound really unique. And they're easy to play too, relatively speaking. There's not different fingerings on each string, so relatively easy to pick up some licks using this basic idea. Now, the licks I'm playing in this lesson are inspired by the opening lick from the solo to Ice Cream Man. So if you don't know what that song is, it's on Van Halen 1, and it's the first part of the solo. So a couple minutes in, the first lick in the solo, that's where this scale is coming from. A very classic, quote-unquote, Eddie Van Halen lick type of lick. Now, before I talk about the pattern, I'll just give you the high-level concept of how you use these scales and how you, in general, play outside notes when you're playing a lick. And the general idea is that you start off on notes that are in the scale, that make sense, that fit with the chord you're playing over, and you end the lick on notes that go with the chord you're playing over. What happens in between, you can get away with doing pretty much anything. So as long as you start in a good spot and end on a good spot, you're good. So that takes us to the pattern that I'm talking about today. So the pattern is we're playing in the key of E. There's my E. The pattern is 12 on the 1st string, 14 on the 1st string, 16, and then 19. So 12, 14, 16, 19. What you'll notice is that these notes are in the E major scale. So whenever we're playing these licks, if we start out in this position here, that goes well with the E. So these licks, I'm tending to start in this section up here. And then as you play through the pattern, 12, 14, 16, 19, all the way down, then it gets kind of into that outside territory. So I play a bunch of notes in that pattern scale, and then the note I land on is always a note that is strong with the E. So like the E note. So if I land on that note, it doesn't really matter what I play in between. If I start on those notes that are in the scale, and then I land on a note that's in the scale, I can kind of play whatever I want in between. And that's the general idea of how to use the Eddie Van Halen scale. So basically what I've got here today is three pretty monster, big, long licks, one of which is the one that I played at the beginning of the lesson. So I'm going to break down each of those step by step, talk about some of the concepts in them, and talk about some exercises that you can use to develop these licks, because as you'll find, one of the tricky part of this lick in particular is there's a bunch of huge stretches. So these are really difficult to play if you have not played licks like this before. So we're talking technique, we're talking theory, and we're showing a few licks. So there's a lot to get out of these out of this lesson and out of these licks. So with that, let's get into the first lick. So there is the first lick, a pretty monster lick, and this is pretty similar to the one at the beginning of Ice Cream Man. Certainly not exactly like it, but pretty close. So let's walk through this lick step by step here. First off, what is really challenging about this lick and other licks in this lesson is the stretch. The stretch on this lick is pretty incredible here. So like I showed it when I was talking in the beginning there, 12, 14, 16, 19 across all six strings. That's the pattern we're dealing with here. So just getting that under your finger is pretty difficult. I'm playing with my first finger on the 12th, my third finger on the 16th, and my fourth finger on the 19th to start off. So just that stretch right there is pretty difficult. What you got to do first, before you can get this under your fingers, get just that stretch down. Don't try and play this lick straight out of the gate, because you're not going to be able to do it if you can't do this first. What you should do is really work just these three fingers, the first, third, and fourth finger in that pattern, just to get used to the stretch. So what I would do is this: starting on the 16th with your third finger, hammer on to the 19th, and then pull off back to the 16th, and then pull off to the 12th. So I would just do this exercise. Until you can do that comfortably. Like I said, you're not going to be able to play this lick unless you get that fingering down. Now, it's a really cool bonus for practicing that is you'll find when you play with those big stretches, the pull-offs with the big stretches, your pull-offs with smaller stretches, just a normal, legato lick, are going to get much stronger and much better. Your hand gets so strong when you're playing big stretches like this. So even if you don't like these licks at all and you don't want to incorporate them into your playing at all, take away the idea of just playing this exercise. These are great exercises at building hand strength. So in any case, that's what I would focus on first before you try and practice this lick, is just try and get the fingering down. A couple tips on the legato here. As always, when you're playing legato, you should pull down when you're coming off the string. And it helps me to think in my head that I'm peeling my fingers off one by one. So it's like, rather than pulling off or pulling down, I'm kind of peeling my hand off the strings. And when I get that in my head, that seems to be what gets my legato to sound good. And play on your fingertips. Playing on your fingertips is a much better sound than playing on the fleshy part of your finger. The difference is subtle, but it's there. You can play a lot faster and a lot more cleanly if you're playing on your fingertips. So take this really slow. If you can't quite get this stretch all the way, do a smaller stretch, do a slightly smaller one, and then work your way up. So for example, I could play 12, 15, 17 and do that same exercise I was talking about. So like this. Hammer on 15 to 17 with your third to fourth finger, then pull off 17 to 15, and then pull off to 12. Once you can get that down, you got that comfortable, then move up to the bigger stretch. It's still the same fingering, it's still the same basic idea. The stretch just is not as difficult. So if you're having way too much trouble with this one, try doing this one first. And then go back and try it again. So that's the first thing. Just get down the basic technique first. Now that you got that down, let's walk through the lick. So the lick is the main pattern. The first couple bars, we're using this pattern right here. So 16, hammer on 19, and then pull off 19 to 12. So like this. And then 14 or 16, pull off the 12. And then 14, pull off the 12. So the whole thing together sounds like this. Notice that the first three notes are a triplet, and the next four notes are 16th notes. So this timing is not even all the way through. It's a little bit different. The first three notes is triplets, so 3 notes between the beat, and the next 4 notes is 4 notes between the beats, 16th notes. So it's like this again. So that's the first, you play that 4 times, that little lick. Then we move on to the second string, and this is where it really starts to sound cool because we're getting outside of the scale. So back to that, you know, the 12, 14, 16, 19, those are in the E scale. And so remember the principle when you're playing outside here. Start on notes that are in the scale, then play a bunch of notes that are outside of the scale, and always land on a note that's on the scale. So that's what we're doing here. These first four notes that we're playing here are in the E major scale. So when we get to the next second string, we're playing outside now. These notes, not all these notes are in the E major scale, but it's the same pattern. So 16, hammer on 19, pull off the 12, and then 16, 12, 14, 12. So same exact pattern. So far the lick is that. 4 times on that pattern on the first string, 2 times the pattern on the second string. So okay, so now we're getting to the third string, and we're also changing up the timing a little bit. So the last 2 licks, like I said, it's a triplet and then a 16th note. This one is a quintuplet, meaning 5 notes between every beat. A unique type of timing. Most people are used to 3 notes between a beat, 2 notes between a beat, 4 notes between a beat. 5 notes between a beat is a much different feel. So it sounds like this. And when we're playing this lick on the third string and the fourth string, we're not playing the 14th fret there. We're only playing the 12, 16, and 19. So the pattern is like this. So imagine the beat there happening every time I hit the 16th fret. That's what the timing is. 5 notes between every beat. So that's really what you want to watch out for there. So in any case, we play that, then we go down to play the same pattern on the 4 string. That 5-note pattern, watch out for that timing. And that's probably one of the trickiest parts of this lick, outside of the fingering and all that, is the timing. This is a great lick that's an exercise for timing. Eddie Van Halen loved to play quintuplets and six sextuplets together, you know, groups of 6, group of 5, groups of 4, and mix them all up. He was excellent at that, excellent at phrasing. So this is a great exercise. We got 16th notes, we got triplets, and we got quintuplets. So and then, like I said, we land always on a strong note. In this case, we're landing on the E. That's where the lick ends up, on the 14th fret on the 4th string. So, E obviously plays over E. We're sticking to that rule. Start off on notes that are in the scale, end on a note that's in the scale. So that's it. That's the first lick. There's a lot to this one. It's probably going to take you a lot of time to get this down. If you don't have the stretches down, but again, I strongly encourage you to practice these licks. You're going to get your fretting hand a lot stronger by practicing these. So that's it. Let's play through this lick one more time at a slow speed. So there is the next lick. Now this one uses a pattern that we played in the first lick, a lick that we basically used in the first lick. So the lick is that quintuplet pattern. And that's the only pattern that I'm using throughout this lick here, that 5-note pattern. The thing that's difficult about this lick, and the idea of why I put in this lesson, this one's tricky because you're switching the strings really quickly. So whereas the first lick, you're hanging on one string for a while. This one, you're blazing through the strings really fast. You're playing the pattern one time on each string. So this is a little more difficult than the first lick in a way because of that. So again, to be able to play this, even more so, you really have to get comfortable with this fretting pattern. So what I would do to build up to this lick, what you have to do is get good playing on one string. So start practicing that 5-note pattern on one string, and then once you get comfortable on the one string, then move to 2 strings. So that would sound something like this. So I'd get good at one string, right? And then I would also, the next step I would play both strings. So I go like this. You know, I'd alternate just between those 2 strings. Right? Once I got good with that, I'd move down to the 2nd and 3rd string. And once you get that down, once you get comfortable with that, you can play that really smoothly. The whole lick becomes easier. So, you know, that's a big takeaway from this lesson here is when you're playing a difficult lick with difficult fingering and you don't quite have the technique yet, what you got to do is play licks that have the same basic idea, same basic fingering, but are easier, and then slowly build up to the lick. Because if you just try and play this lick straight out of the gate, you're not going to get it. You're going to frustrate yourself. You're going to spend a lot of time trying to get it. So again, you know, work your way up to this slowly. Another thing you can do here too, back to a technique that I talked about earlier, if you can't quite get that stretch, play the 12, 15, 17 instead. So maybe a good progression here, if you can't do this at all, you're really struggling with this, play 12, 15, 17, and go through that same pattern. Play 12, 15, 17 on just one string. Then move on to the 2nd string and try and play those 2 strings. And, you know, work your way up from there. And then once you get that, then go back to the big stretch version. So the idea is you always want to continue progressing. You don't want to put a roadblock in front of yourself by trying to play something you absolutely can't play. Always try and do something that is within your reach. And if you do that, you're always gonna get better. So the lick itself is really simple. Let's play it through it one more time slowly. So there is the last lick. This one, I am not playing up to the 19th fret. I'm only playing 12, 14, and 16 on the first, second, and third strings here. So only 12, 14, 16. So the stretch is less on this one. You can try and do this with your first, second, and third finger. When I played it there, I was using my first, second, and fourth finger. So this is the third lick. The pattern is harder, but the fingering's easier. So in some ways this lick is more difficult, in some ways it's easier. If you can't quite get the stretch down, then this lick is going to be easy for you. Much easier anyway. So basically we're dealing with a 5-note pattern, but it's a little different than the 5-note pattern we've dealt with before. So in notice in this lick too, we're following that same principle. Remember that we're starting on good notes and then ending on good notes. So 12, 14, 16, those are all in the E major scale. And we're ending this lick on the G note, which is the minor third of E. Still a strong note in the E minor scale. So that's a good note to land on. As long as we're not landing on, that note or something like that, we're good. So minor third is always a strong note to land on. So let's talk about the pattern. There's basically 2 patterns that we're dealing with here. The first one's this. So starting on the 12, hit the 12, then pull off 16, 14, 12, and then land on the 16 on the next string down. So now the picking pattern here too, I'm tending to pick both the first 2 notes with a downstroke, upstroke. I'm pretty much doing that with every lick I'm playing here. So I'm following that same basic rule here. And then when I get down to the lower string, I do a downstroke. So pick the first 2 notes, down, up, and then pick on the 16th fret on the second string, downstroke. So we play that pattern twice. That's the basic pattern. The next pattern is more difficult. So we got this. Everything's a 5-note pattern. So the next pattern is starting in the 12 on the first string again. We then pull 16, 14, 12 on the second string. And then land on the 16th fret on the third string. So this next 5-note pattern is happening across 3 strings. Much more difficult from a picking perspective, and a little more difficult in the fretting on the fretting hand too. When I'm playing across 3 strings, my picking pattern is this: up on the 12th fret, down on the 16th fret on the second string, and then a downstroke on the 16th fret on the third string. And then when I play it again, I again start with an upstroke on the first string. So it's like this. You can either pick when you're on the second string in that lick, pick just the first note, or pick the first 2 notes. If you can do that. I always tend to pick more notes if I can, generally speaking. So a lot of picks and licks like this sounds good to me. So I try and pick both those notes. So those two patterns are the patterns in the lick. So this is the first one, and this is the second one. So the lick is we play it the pattern twice, the first pattern twice on the first string. Then we play that second pattern starting in the first string. Then we go back to the first pattern again, this time starting on the second string. Then we play the pattern 2 starting in the second string. So a really simple idea. It's two basic patterns we're using, and we're just moving down the string. It's kind of the same idea as the other licks. But that's the basic lick. Again, quintuplets, so really watch the timing here. That's one of the difficult parts. But other than that, a pretty straightforward pattern lick. So that's it. Let's play through this one more time at a slow speed.